In the heart of the shimmering Zahram palace, Sheikh Rashad al-Khoury, known for his ruthless control over his empire and heart alike, was moments away from sealing a fate forged by family chains. The weight of an arranged marriage, one he hadn't chosen, pressed on him like the desert sun beating down mercilessly. His lips pressed into a hard line as the sound of servants preparing the grand hall slipped through the marble halls, a cruel reminder that tomorrow his life would no longer belong solely to him. The palace rose like a gleaming oasis amidst the endless sands, its towering minarets piercing the cloudless sky. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of oud and jasmine, mingling with the faint rustle of silk tapestries embroidered with gold threads. Walls draped in rich crimson velvets caught the light of crystal chandeliers, scattering diamonds of illumination across the glossy floors. Persian carpets whispered beneath footsteps, narrating tales older than time, while jewel-encrusted artifacts shimmered in alcoves, silent witnesses to generations of power. Sheikh Rashad stood by a floor-to-ceiling window, his silhouette framed by the sprawling desert beyond, a vast sea of gold meeting endless blue horizons. His eyes, usually sharp as falcons, held a shadow of torment tonight. The empire around him might tremble at his command, but within he felt a restless ache, a growing tempest of entrapment and rebellion. A soft knock broke his reverie. The door swung open to reveal Layla, the new maid recently assigned to his household. Her modest dress could not conceal the fire owning quietly in her deep brown eyes. She carried no airs of submission. Instead, there was an unspoken strength behind her gentle demeanor. Like an ember glowing beneath soft ash, the faint perfume trailing her, the hint of rose and cardamom, nodded something unexpectedly tender in Sheikh Rashad's chest. "Your Highness." Layla's voice was steady, but laced mere servant. Perhaps, in this tangled web of duty and desire, Layla was the only one who could match the weight of his exile. But just as the fragile alliance took root, a shadow crossed the grand hallway outside. Footsteps, not belonging to any servant or guest. An urgent voice reached the room. "Sheikh Rashad, there is news about Layla." Rashad's pulse thundered. The game was no longer just theirs to play. And before the next secret of this emirate unfolds, quickly check if you are already part of our caravan of stories. Many fates will still be forged, and I don't want you to miss a single moment. Leave your like if the heart of this sheikh has already intrigued you. Tell me in the comments, from which city are you following this saga, and what twist do you think is coming? Your passion for these dramas inspires us to keep going. Thank you for being with us. The footsteps echoed sharply through the marble hallway, slicing through the thick veil of silence that had settled over Zahram Palace. Sheikh Rashad's skin prickled under the sudden intrusion, his heart thumping fiercely as the door creaked open again, not to reveal a servant, but a figure whose presence tightened the air as surely as the desert's heat outside. "Your Highness," came a voice, low and urgent. "We have uncovered something about Layla." Rashad's gaze snapped back toward the door. His sharp eyes met the messenger's, the palace advisor whose loyalty was as steadfast as the shifting dunes outside. Yet there was hesitation there, a flicker of unease that betrayed the gravity of the news. "Speak," Rashad ordered, voice cold as polished obsidian. The weight of the empire pressed upon him, but now a different burden settled heavier still, a shroud of suspense he'd not demanded. "The woman you call Layla, she is not who she claims to be." The words hung suspended for a moment, thick with the promise of upheaval. Rashad's jaw clenched, the iron will beneath the cultivated ruthlessness flickering like a torch caught in moist wind. He stared out once more across the endless desert. The fading sunset, painting gold and crimson streaks across the horizon. Each wave of heat from the vast sands seemed to mock his captivity within these walls, tomorrow binding him to an unknown fate, and now this, a secret poised to unravel the fragile thread he was beginning to trust. Layla stood by the window, her silhouette backlit by ambers and shadows. The fire in her dark eyes had never seemed more intense, resilient, fierce, and undeniably alive. Rashad stepped forward, his voice less a command and more a question slicing through the charged air. "Explain." The advisor cleared his throat, lowering his voice. "Our spies discovered she entered Zahram under another name. She is connected to a faction hostile to the Al-Khoury family." Time stilled around Rashad as the pieces clicked, his mind racing against the ticking clock of tomorrow's ceremony. The woman who dared to suggest deceit, who spoke of clever ruses and feigned loyalty, might herself be the ultimate deception. The betrayal stung sharper than any desert wind. Yet beneath the sting rose a complicated ember, part envy, part reluctant admiration. Layla was the only person who had dared to undermine him openly, to meet his gaze without flinching. And now, that same audacity veiled a dark secret that threatened to shatter everything. He turned to confront her, the crystal chandeliers casting fractured light across his chiseled features. "Is this true?" he demanded. Layla met his challenge without a hint of hesitation. "I came to you under pretense, yes, but not to destroy you, to save something only you can understand." Her words landed like heavy stones on the glossy floor. Rashad's brows furrowed in a storm of disbelief and calculation. To save him? To save what? The tension between them stretched taut, every breath thick with unsaid truths. Suddenly the grandeur of the palace seemed smaller, as if the vast opulence was nothing more than a gilded cage, keeping both prisoner and conspirator confined. Rashad turned abruptly, striding toward the ornate desk, littered with maps and ancient family seals. Fingers brushing over the silk fabric, his mind elaborated 1,000 strategies and counter-strategies. Could he afford a traitor at his side? Could he tolerate this fragile alliance tethered to a lie so profound? "But if you are an enemy," he said finally, voice edged with steel, "why stay so close?" Layla's lips pressed into a thin line, eyes flashing with a desperation that shook the careful facade she wore. "Because your enemies don't realize that the greatest danger lies not in your enemies without, but in those who seek to consume you from within." Rashad's breath hitched, the truth in her statement echoing the silent fears he rarely voiced. Every whispered plot, every shadowed threat gnawed at him like the relentless desert nights. He pivoted sharply, the vast hall crashing back into focus, the walls shimmering with gold and crimson, the precious artifacts silently bearing witness to secrets far darker than their gleam suggested. "Tomorrow," he said softly, "the future severed into before and after. The world will see only a sheikh resigned to his fate. But tonight," Layla whispered, stepping closer with a confidence born of both recklessness and resolve, "we rewrite the story." Her words hovered between them, seductive and dangerous. Outside, the wind surged, rattling the heavy curtains, as if time itself pressed upon the palace. Rashad felt the pulse of the desert, relentless, unforgiving, and yet there was an unfamiliar stirring within him. A fierce command to take control of the script written by others. "Layla," he murmured, voice low and unyielding, "if what you say is true, then trust must be earned. But know this, I am no man to be deceived lightly." Her smile was a fragile dawn breaking through endless night. "Then let the game begin," she answered. Suddenly, the heavy wooden doors burst open, and a new presence filled the room. A figure draped in embroidered silks, eyes sharp and calculating. "Your Highness," the newcomer bowed with a chilling grace, "there is one more truth you must confront." Rashad's gaze latched onto the intruder, heart pounding a fierce tattoo beneath his ribcage. "What truth?" he demanded, voice a razor slicing through the thickening tension. The man's smile was cold and unwavering. "The past you thought buried refuses to remain silent." A deafening silence swallowed the room. Rashad swallowed hard, the weight of unspoken legacies crashing down like a sandstorm, blurring the edges of what he believed was certain. And in that moment, as the palace seemed to hold its breath, Sheikh Rashad al-Khoury realized that the greatest battle he would face was not against his enemies, nor the bonds of an arranged marriage. It was the ghosts of his own past, awakening with a vengeance that threatened to undo everything, including the fragile trust woven between him and Layla. The tension in the grand hall thickened like the desert heat, suffocating and inevitable. Sheikh Rashad's eyes did not waver from the intruder's figure, carved with the ruthless precision of a desert storm. The sudden weight of the unknown pressed upon him, making the room shrink despite its vast opulence. "The past you thought buried," the man continued, his voice a low blade slicing through the fragile calm, "refuses to remain silent." Rashad's breath caught, the embers of old wounds blazing fiercely beneath his skin. The dusty corridors of his memories unfolded unbidden, shadows of a boy betrayed, whispers of blood debts, and the cold silence of betrayals. Disguised as family loyalty, Layla stepped forward, her gaze unwavering. "What past?" she demanded, voice taut with urgency. Her presence, once a mere flicker in Rashad's calculated world, stirred now like a tempest breaking the stillness. The advisor's eyes flicked briefly to her before he answered. "The legacy of the al-Khoury bloodline carries secrets, dangerous enough to undo the empire. There are those who seek not only your crown, but the ruin of your very name." Rashad's jaw clenched as his fingers curled around the polished armrest of an ancient chair carved with family crests. That very legacy had been both a shield and a prison, binding him tighter than the alliance forced upon him. The arranged marriage tomorrow was merely another chain. And Layla? Rashad's voice was an unforgiving silk. How deep does her allegiance run in this web of shadows? Before Layla could answer, the weight of Rashad's doubt hung heavily in the air, thickening the dust motes that danced like ghosts in the waning sunlight. She lowered her eyes, but when she spoke, there was no hesitation. "My loyalty is to your survival." Her words were a whispered vow, fragile yet fierce. "I came to protect what remains unseen, to fight the battle you refuse to face." Rashad's gaze bore into hers, searching for the truth amid the flickers of defiance and desperation. She was a stranger woven into the tapestry of his life by threads he was only beginning to unravel. A flicker of pain passed through his steel-gray eyes, a rare glimpse of a man shadowed by the weight of impossible choices. "You speak of battles beneath the surface," he said quietly, "but tomorrow the world will watch as I surrender to a fate imposed upon me. How can I trust a fight hidden in shadows when the public sees only the show?" Layla stepped even closer, the scent of rose and cardamom wrapping around him, tangible and intoxicating. Her hand brushed against the marble table, steady despite the storm swirling between them. "Because what is seen is rarely the truth, Sheikh Rashad. The empire's walls are filled with whispers, and not all threats wear a visible face. Your greatest enemy is the one who moves unseen. Even within these gilded halls, his heart pounded like the rhythmic beat of a distant drum, each pulse a reminder of the delicate dance he was forced to join. The harsh reality was clear. The enemy was not only outside, it was pressing in through every door, every trusted smile. Suddenly, the heavy doors to the hall burst open once more. Silhouetted against the twilight was a woman cloaked in midnight blue, her eyes sharp with a cold fire. A silence fell as she entered, every step measured, commanding. "Sheikh Rashad," she announced without preamble, the room catching its breath. "There is another truth you must face." The hall grew colder, and Rashad's gaze sharpened. The woman's presence was like a fracture in his carefully constructed world. Unsettling, inevitable. "What truth now?" Rashad demanded, every fiber of his being taut with vigilance. The woman's smile was merciless, a crescent moon hanging over a desert grave. "The marriage you dread, the one chained by duty, it is not what it seems. Your bride carries a secret that will shatter the foundation of your empire." Layla's eyes narrowed, a flash of warning sparking between her and Rashad. The walls themselves seemed to lean in closer, waiting, listening. Rashad felt the ground shift beneath him, the past, present, and future collapsing into a single point of unrelenting suspense. The whispered lies, the veiled truths, the weight of legacies. This was more than a marriage. It was a battlefield cloaked in silk and deceit. He clenched his fists, stepping forward until only the light from the chandeliers separated him from the midnight-clad messenger. "Reveal this secret." The woman lifted a folded letter, edged with the emblem of a rival house, an accusing symbol drenched in dark intent. "This arrived this morning," she explained. "A warning. Your bride's ties run deeper than you can imagine, and not all want peace." Rashad's lips pressed into a tight line. The desert sun outside may scorch and burn, but within these walls, a fiercer fire was igniting. One that threatened to consume everything he had fought to build. Layla reached out, her hand resting lightly on Rashad's, an anchor in the rising storm. "We stand on the precipice of ruin or redemption," she whispered. "The choice is ours to make." For a fleeting moment, Rashad's iron facade cracked, and a glimmer of raw vulnerability shone through. The man who ruled with unyielding dominance was haunted by ghosts he could no longer silence, ghosts that would shape their fates long after the sun had set. As the night deepened, silence engulfed Zahram Palace once more. Outside, the desert wind howled a mournful tune, carrying the scent of secrets and promises broken like fragile glass. And in the shadows, unseen eyes watched, waiting for the moment when the true battle would begin, when Sheikh Rashad's empire would no longer bow to tradition, but rise to confront the darkness lurking within. Tomorrow was no longer just the day of a forced union. It was the dawn of a reckoning that would tear apart the veils of power, love, and betrayal. And Rashad knew, deep in his bones, that his greatest enemy was not the stranger he was to marry, nor the faceless factions plotting his downfall. It was a memory, a whispered curse from the past that had returned with a vengeance, more dangerous than any blade, ready to claim what was his and everything he dared to protect. The tension in Zahram Palace deepened as the midnight-clad woman's words echoed off the gilded walls. Rashad's breath was shallow, his mind spinning with the weight of fresh betrayal. His empire, his family, the very legacy he carried, each thread threatened to unravel at the seams. Layla's hand stayed firmly on his, grounding him amidst the storm. Her fierce gaze met his, shining like a beacon in the growing darkness. "We must act carefully," she urged softly, the scent of rose and cardamom weaving through the heavy air. "The secret your bride hides could ignite a war within these walls." Rashad's eyes narrowed. "War is familiar to me," he admitted, voice rough like sand against stone. "But a betrayal so close, it cuts deeper than any battle." The chamber grew colder, despite the burning desert beyond the thick glass panes. The crystal chandeliers above scattered fractured light that danced like ghosts upon the crimson drapes. Outside, the desert wind howled, as if mourning the unraveling of the Al-Khoury legacy. The woman in midnight blue, her expression unyielding, stepped forward, drawing a folded parchment from within her cloak. "This letter arrived hours ago," she said, voice razor-sharp. "It bears the seal of House Maid, the rivals who have shadowed your family for decades. It warns that your bride is more than she appears." Rashad's fingers clenched into fists at his sides. The letter felt like a gauntlet thrown, a challenge wrapped in silk and deceit. "What do they claim?" he demanded, unwilling to give any place to doubt, yet needing to understand the full measure of the threat. "She has ties to House Maid, perhaps even blood," the messenger revealed, eyes flickering with quiet menace. "Her arrival was never a peace offering. The match was not just a union, it was a trap. Layla exhaled slowly, the tension in her chest unspooling just slightly. If this is true, the ceremony tomorrow is a facade, a stage for a game far deadlier than mere politics. Rashad's gaze darted to the grand mirrors, their gilded frames reflecting his storm-racked face. The man who commanded empires now felt like a caged falcon, wings clipped by the very traditions meant to protect him. The weight of the arranged marriage pressed down anew, but now with the added burden of suspicion and danger. "Layla," he said, voice low yet fierce, "everything I believed, every truth I held about tomorrow's union has been shattered." She met him steadily, the fire in her dark eyes refusing to waver. "Then we must write a new truth, one born not of chains, but of choice." A sudden crack of thunder rattled the palace windows, though no storm darkened the desert sky. It was as if the heavens themselves recoiled at the tempest gathering inside Zahram's walls. Rashad paced, silk slippers whispering across Persian carpets, thoughts spiraling, each step marked by the clash between duty and desire, loyalty and betrayal. He was a sheikh bound by heritage, yet suffocating in its decrees. The memory of his father's stern gaze flashed unbidden, the cold lessons of power and sacrifice. How had the empire come to this? A fragile dynasty teetering on the brink of ruin, and a bride whose shadow loomed larger than any ally. Layla's voice cut through the maelstrom. "We cannot face this alone. Allies are hidden in unexpected places, but trust must be earned, not given." The words struck a chord, and Rashad's heart wrenched at the fragile hope that blossomed despite the peril. Perhaps Layla, with her secrets and her defiance, was the only constant he could cling to. Suddenly, the heavy wooden doors burst open once more. This time, the husband of the night entered, a man cloaked in silence, but radiating an unshakable authority. His presence silenced even the restless chandeliers. "Sheikh Rashad," he intoned, voice thick with gravitas. "There is a message you must hear, one that links the past with the danger now at your doorstep." Rashad's gaze locked onto the newcomer, sensing the weight of history pressed tightly within his words. The man unfolded an aged map, edges frayed, revealing hidden markings etched in ink that glistened faintly under the palace lights. "This map," he continued, "charts the ancient alliances and betrayals tied to the Al-Khoury bloodline. Secrets your forefathers buried to preserve power, but enemies now seek to unearth." Rashad's chest tightened, the air thickening as if the palace itself held its breath. The intricate tapestry of loyalty, love, and deceit was unraveling, thread by thread. Layla stepped closer, watching him with a mixture of resolve and vulnerability. "You must decide what role you will play, Sheikh. A puppet to fate, or the master of your own destiny?" His eyes burned with a tempest of emotion, anger, fear, desire, all weaving together into a fierce determination. The man who had been resigned to a life scripted by others now felt the stirrings of rebellion. He looked to Layla, the woman who had once been a stranger, now his confidant in shadows and storm. The first light of dawn began to filter through the lattice windows, casting long golden spears of light across the marble floor. Outside, the desert breathed in anticipation as creatures of night retreated into silence. Rashad's voice was a harsh whisper, rough and resolute. Tomorrow's marriage is no longer a sentence, it is a battlefield. A tense silence fell. Then the midnight-clad messenger's lips curled into a smirk laced with warning. And the bride holds the key to more than your heart. She may hold the fate of Zahram itself. The room grew heavy with unspoken truths and the promise of firestorms yet to come. Rashad's jaw tightened. The empire he commanded, the woman beside him, whose loyalty was a fierce enigma, and the secrets buried in blood and sand. Each awaited his command, but as the last rays of the sun disappeared beneath the dunes, a sudden, chilling whisper sliced through the quiet. From the shadowed corner of the hall, a figure stepped forward. Her eyes glinted with cold malice, and in her hand she held a slender dagger, tipped with the blackest onyx. For every secret revealed, she murmured, voice venomous, there is a price to pay. Rashad's breath caught. The veil of night might hide many things, but there was no hiding from the blade of betrayal. Now, closer than ever. The palace was swallowed by an uneasy silence after the woman's chilling words echoed through the grand hall. The heavy scent of oud clung to the air, mixing with the faint trace of rose and cardamom from Layla's presence, an intoxicating contrast to the tension curling like smoke between them all. Sheikh Rashad's sharp gaze never left the midnight-clad messenger. His heart hammered fiercely, the weight of betrayal pressing deeper than the desert sun's relentless heat. The empire he had painstakingly built on ancient blood and fierce determination now hovered on a knife's edge, balanced between honor and ruin. Your words poison the air, Rashad said slowly, voice low and steady, but edged with steel. If my bride hides a secret so dangerous, why has she remained silent? The woman smiled, a cruel crescent moon slicing through the shadows. Because, Your Highness, some truths are weapons sharpened in silence, and tomorrow the world will witness a union that is anything but peace. Layla's hand tightened around Rashad's, an anchor in the storm. Her eyes burned with unyielding resolve, but beneath that fire simmered a vulnerability few had seen. We walk on a blade's edge, she whispered. And the danger is not only the enemy outside these walls, but the ones who wear a mask within. Rashad's jaw clenched. The weight of inherited duty, the gnawing sting of deception, and the fragile thread of trust he had begun to offer Layla tangled in his mind like desert thorns. Yet despite the storm roiling inside him, her presence was a beacon, wild, unpredictable, but genuine. He paced slowly toward the windows, where the last light of the desert sun bled through desert sand-tinted glass. The sprawling dunes stretched beyond, endless and indifferent to the kingdoms and betrayals they sheltered. Against that endless expanse, he was both a towering pillar and a trapped falcon. The past, Rashad murmured. It claws its way back from silent graves. Secrets our ancestors buried now threaten to devour all we built. Layla's voice cut through the gathering shadows. Then we unearth them first, before they poison the roots. His eyes flicked back to her, questioning, searching for that fragile thread of alliance. If your loyalty serves only my survival, betray me, and I will crush you beneath the weight of this empire. She met his warning without flinching. Then watch me prove that my revolution is the only truth left to cling to. A distant clatter echoed suddenly. The palace doors burst wide, revealing a figure, unexpected, enigmatic, cloaked in the soft folds of a desert night. His eyes, sharp and cold, locked onto Rashad, with certainty born of old debts settled in silence. "Your Highness," the newcomer intoned, voice steady and grave, "there is a message from the heart of House Maid that demands your immediate attention. It ties the past you thought buried to the darkness approaching your doorstep." Rashad's grip tightened on the marble railing, veins pulsing with sudden heat. The man unfurled a map, ancient and frayed, the ink tracing lines and symbols all too familiar. "These marks," the messenger said, "are not mere records. They chart betrayals and alliances, blood spilled for power, and the hidden paths your ancestors took to. Safeguard their reign." Rashad's cold gaze swept over the map, the weight of history settling solidly in his bones. Every castle marked, every boundary crossed, was a reminder that power demanded sacrifice, often blood-soaked and merciless. "We face storms both outside and within," Layla said softly, stepping closer. "The great deception is not the marriage, but the war waged beneath its silent veil." The flickering chandelier light danced across Rashad's chiseled face, catching the rare moment when fear and fierce determination mingled. He thought of the bride, the mystery entwining her like a serpent coiled beneath the veil. "How deep does this game run?" he demanded, voice low but carving through the thickening dread. The midnight messenger's eyes gleamed. "Her lineage is tied to those who once sought to shatter your empire. She carries the blood of a rival house, House Maid's greatest secret." Layla's breath hitched. "If that is true, not only your throne, but your very soul is at stake." Rashad turned abruptly toward her, his eyes raw pools of conflict. "And yet you chose to stand with me, a stranger with shadowed truths." Her gaze hardened, fierce as the desert sun. "Because only from the ashes of deception can true loyalty rise." The weight of her confession settled in the charged air between them. Behind the opulent walls of Zahram Palace, trust was as fragile as the crystal chandeliers above, threatened by every whisper, every secret glance. Outside, the wind howled through the empty courtyards, carrying with it the scent of shifting sands and impending storm. Rashad stepped toward the grand doorways, voice barely a whisper, carved from ice and fire. "Tomorrow's ceremony will unveil more than union. It will ignite a war hidden beneath centuries of silence." His eyes narrowed, fixing on the gate, beyond the palace halls, where shadows gathered, waiting for the moment to strike. And as the last ember of sunset faded into an obsidian sky, a cold whisper slicked through the silence. A voice neither friend nor foe, but an echo of a past long buried. "Your greatest enemy is closer than you think." The room held its breath. Rashad's hand clenched into a fist at his side, knuckles pale against the weight of unsaid wars. Tonight, the Sheikh Billionaire realized that the battlefield was no longer just the vast desert beyond his palace. It was the perilous terrain of trust, legacy, and a bride whose secret could unravel all he held dear. The midnight air pressed heavily against the grand windows of Zahram Palace, the amber glow of lanterns casting long shadows that flickered like restless spirits across the rich velvet drapes. Within the heart of the chamber, Sheikh Rashad stood steeped in the thickening tension, his steely eyes locked on the midnight-clad messenger. The ancient map lay unfolded before them, its frayed edges whispering of betrayals, long buried beneath layers of dust and deceit. His throat tightened with a bitter mixture of rage and doubt. This was a realm where loyalty was as fragile as spun glass, and each whispered secret could unravel kingdoms. The revelation that his bride, the woman chosen to bind his fate, carried the blood of House Maid, sworn rivals to his own lineage, ignited a wildfire of conflicting emotions within him. Layla's slender hand found his, a grounding touch amidst the storm. Her dark eyes, fierce pools of determination, bore into his with a promise that cut through the chaos. We face shadows that move unseen, beyond politics and bloodlines, she murmured. If the bride's secret is a spark, then it is knowledge we must use to shape the flame. Rashad inhaled sharply, his gaze drifting to the vast desert, stretched like a golden sea beneath the night sky. The dunes were indifferent to human affairs, their silent expanse mocking the fragile empires built within their reach. His own legacy, once a fortress, felt more like a cage locking him into a destiny forged by others. Yet tonight a fragment of rebellion stirred in his chest, a whispered defiance against fate itself. "Tomorrow," he said, voice low but edged with resolve, "the world will see a sheikh surrendering to tradition. But behind those silken walls, I will decide the script written in the shadows." A flicker of something tender, hope, perhaps, passed through Layla's expression. She stepped forward, the scent of rose and cardamom a delicate contrast to the cool night. "Then let us write that script together," she said, voice raw with conviction. "For survival, for power, for truth." The heavy doors to the hall suddenly groaned open once more, the sound slicing through the fragile calm. A figure appeared, cloaked in rich emerald brocade, eyes glinting with a purpose sharpened by secrets. "Your Highness," the newcomer intoned, bowing slightly, yet radiating authority. "There is one more message, one that pierces deeper than blood feuds." Rashad stiffened, muscles taut beneath the embroidered tunic. "Speak." The figure produced a small satchel from within his cloak, producing a scroll sealed with wax bearing the crest unfamiliar, yet ominous. "This arrived just as the sun fell," he said, "from a source hidden well within the emirate. It warns not only of your bride's lineage, but of a plot seated in the very roots of your family tree. Trust becomes both weapon and weakness." His gaze searched hers, vulnerable despite the layers of ruthless facade. "You risk everything standing beside me." Her smile was a fragile promise, because surviving alone is failing before the fight begins. A faint breeze stirred, sending the heavy crimson curtains fluttering softly. The air seemed charged with silent warnings, every corner holding hushed conspiracies waiting to bloom like lethal desert roses. Rashad's mind raced through endless possibilities. If the marriage itself was a battlefield, then he must prepare for war beneath the surface. The satchel scroll unrolled, revealing diagrams and coded messages, threads connecting generations, ancient vendettas, and the betrayal of kin. The emblem of a forgotten faction, a shadow within shadows, marked the warnings. Those who sought not only to topple the Al-Khoury dynasty, but to claim its ashes. Layla's fingers brushed his arm briefly, her touch steadying the tumult inside him. The game is no longer merely survival. It is dominion over the past, or surrender to it. Rashad exhaled slowly, the fire in his gaze kindling into fierce determination. His empire, his honor, and perhaps the fragile hope flickering between them, depended on his next moves. Suddenly, a soft sound rose from the alcove. Nearby, a muted sob, quickly swallowed by the opulence. Rashad's head snapped toward the shadowed corner, every muscle tense like a coiled spring. A figure emerged, a woman, draped in midnight silk, her eyes, glossy with tears barely masked by steel resolve. "Your Highness," she whispered, voice trembling yet edged with truth. "There is one truth no map reveals." Rashad's heart thundered in his chest as she stepped forward, holding a worn locket, its delicate chain catching the chandelier light. Within, a faded portrait, unmistakably familiar. "She is no mere pawn in this game," the woman continued, voice burdened with years of secrets, "but the key to a betrayal you never saw coming." Layla's eyes darkened with warning, while Rashad's jaw clenched. The fragile alliance forged between them, now tethered to shadows deeper and more personal than either could have imagined. The chamber fell into a breathless silence as all present understood the magnitude of the revelation. More than lineage, more than politics, this was a reckoning, born of blood and love, of choices made in darkness, and the inescapable echoes they left behind. Rashad's gaze bore into the fading locket, while outside the desert wind howled with the fury of 1,000 storms. His voice, harsh and resolute, shattered the stillness. "Then it's time to face the past, before it devours our future." And in that moment, as the palace held its breath, a faint whisper unfolded from the shadows. Soft, chilling, undeniable. The greatest betrayal is not the stranger's secret, but the one hiding in your own blood. The night deepened, draping Zahram Palace in a cloak stitched from shadows and starlight. Sheikh Rashad stood rigid by the expansive window, the ancient map spread before him like a battle plan etched in secrets and half-truths. The cool desert breeze shifted the heavy crimson curtains, a fleeting reminder that beyond these opulent walls, the world remained indifferent to the schemes unfolding inside. Layla's hand rested lightly on his, her dark eyes burning with a fierce determination that matched the turmoil twisting within Rashad's chest. Despite the fragile trust between them, the weight of impending betrayal seeped into the very air they breathed. Every minute felt like a grain of sand slipping through an hourglass, destined to shatter. "We must move swiftly," Layla whispered, voice roughened by urgency. "The letter, the lineage, they are pieces of a puzzle that threatens to tear the Al-Khoury dynasty apart." Rashad's gaze hardened, fingers curling into a tight fist. The bloodline he defended, was tangled with enemies, lurking in veils and shadows. The marriage tomorrow, once merely a chain of duty, now resembled a sniper's trap hidden beneath silks. Who can we trust inside these walls? His voice carried the weight of centuries, tempered with exhaustion. Loyalty has become a currency, paid in whispers. Layla looked upward, the glowing chandeliers casting fragile halos around her determined face. Alliances must be forged in darkness. I will stand by your side, but we must uncover who hides behind the smiles and silence. A sudden movement from the corner drew their attention. An older woman stepped forward from the shadows, robes flowing like a midnight river. Her eyes glistened with a painful knowledge that rippled through the stillness. In her trembling hand, she held a worn locket, old and fragile, its silver chain catching the golden light. "Your Highness," she said, her voice barely more than a breath. "There are truths the maps do not tell, secrets woven not just in blood, but in love and sacrifice." Rashad's eyes narrowed, the hardened edges of power softening for a fleeting moment. He reached out instinctively, brushing his palm against the worn locket's delicate surface. Inside was a faded portrait, a woman whose face stirred echoes buried deep in his memory. "Who is she?" Rashad demanded, voice a mixture of shock and wary hope. The woman's lip quivered. "She is the key, a truth hidden by the ones you trusted most." Her gaze flickered toward Layla, "And her story is entwined with yours more than you realize." Layla's brow furrowed, tension rippling across her usually steady demeanor. The house of cards beneath their feet shifted dangerously. Unspoken glances passed between the three, laden with questions that hung like desert heat, intense, suffocating, impossible to ignore. Rashad tore his eyes from the locket, pacing the vast chamber where marble floors echoed his restless steps. Each footfall dredged memories of a past marred by betrayal, duty, and love sacrificed for the crown. "They buried her," he whispered, voice hollow. "Erased her from the history they wanted me to inherit." A bitter laugh escaped him, dry and raw like desert wind against cracked stones. "And now, that ghost has walked back into my life, to burn down every lie I built my empire on." Layla stepped closer, the scent of rose and cardamom mingling with the musk of the ancient palace. She reached for his hand again, anchoring him in the swirling chaos. "The past isn't finished with you, Rashad," she said, eyes fierce and unyielding. "But neither are you finished with it?" The flicker of vulnerability that had appeared earlier now blazed into fierce resolve. The Sheikh Billionaire, no longer just a man shackled by family chains, ignited with the fire of a ruler ready to reclaim his destiny. Suddenly, the grand doors to the chamber were thrown open once more, their heavy wood groaning like a beast disturbed. A figure appeared, wrapped in black velvet, embroidered with silver threads, an envoy from a distant desert hall. Their face masked by shadows, but stance exuding authority. "Your Highness," the figure intoned, voice smooth, yet edged with danger. "News from the southern front may change your course. What you face is no longer a mere family feud. It is a war for the soul of the emirate." Rashad's eyes narrowed, every muscle coiled like a spring ready to snap. "Speak quickly." The envoy produced a sealed scroll, the emblem of a fallen house burning into its wax like a curse. House Maid has moved beyond silent whispers. Their forces gather under veils of night. Your bride's secret is but the opening gambit in a battle that will spill blood across these sands. A cold silence fell, as heavy and crushing as the weight of the desert midday sun. Rashad's jaw clenched, the fractured trust between him and Layla stretched taut as a bowstring. "Then we have no time to falter," Layla said, her voice low but steady. "Only by revealing every shadow can we survive the coming storm." A slow smile curved Rashad's lips, dark and dangerous as a desert serpent coiling in the underbrush. "Tomorrow, they expect me to kneel, but I will rise a storm," he vowed, eyes blazing like molten gold. He turned to Layla, voice husky with something unspoken, yet burning deep. "Prepare yourself. We forge our own path now. One carved not by fate, but by fire." The heavy silence, shattered by a sudden whisper, drifting from the darkest corner of the chamber. Chilling and undeniable. "The true betrayal is closer than your wedding night. It waits within these walls, ready to strike when you least expect." Rashad's breath hitched, every sense sharpening, as the palace around him seemed to close in. He met Layla's gaze, her steady flame against the gathering night. Together, they faced the tempest rising within and without, as the invisible enemy moved closer, unseen but deadly as a desert viper's strike. The cool night pressed heavily against the opulent walls of Zahram Palace, the heavy velvet curtains swaying slightly in the desert breeze as if carrying whispered secrets from beyond the dunes. In the heart of the grand chamber, Sheikh Rashad stood motionless, the ancient map laid bare before him. His steely eyes traced the frayed ink lines, the weight of generations pressing down like the relentless desert sun. Every grain of sand outside seemed indifferent to the storm raging within these walls. Layla's hand rested on his forearm, a small anchor amidst the tempest swirling in his mind. Her dark gaze held steadfast fire, matching the turmoil in Rashad's chest. Despite the fragile trust forged in shadows, the chill of betrayal seeped through the room, thickening the air with tension. Time dwindled like the last embers of a dying fire. "We must act before the night swallows us whole," Layla murmured, her voice husky with urgency. "The letter, her lineage, they are threads of a trap woven to unravel the Al-Khoury dynasty." Rashad's jaw hardened, fingers tightening like iron bands. The bloodline he bore was entangled with enemies who lurked unseen, hidden behind veils and false smiles. His future, once a tapestry of power and pride, now resembled a snare spun with golden threads. "Who can we trust within this fortress of gilded lies?" His voice cracked with the weight of centuries. "Loyalty is a currency paid in whispers and daggers." Layla lifted her chin, the chandelier's glow haloing her defiance. "Alliances will be forged in silence and shadow. I stand with you, but we must expose those who smile with sharpened knives beneath their grins." Before Rashad could answer, the chamber's heavy silence shattered with the soft rustle of robes. From the shadowed corner, an elderly woman stepped forward, her movements a gentle river flowing through the storm. Her eyes glistened with pain and ancient knowledge. In trembling hands, she held a delicate locket, its silver chain catching the golden light like a fragile thread of hope. "Your Highness," she whispered, voice barely more than a sigh, "there are truths no map reveals, tales woven not only in blood, but in love, betrayal, and sacrifices long buried." The Sheikh's icy gaze softened momentarily as his hand instinctively reached to touch the locket's worn surface. Within, a faded portrait, a woman whose face stirred long-forgotten echoes, buried deep beneath duty and pain. "Who is she?" Rashad demanded, voice trembling with a strange mixture of grief and hope. The woman's lip quivered, her eyes flickering toward Layla. "She is the key, the shadow hidden within your legacy. Her story entwines with yours in ways that will shatter the truths you once held." Layla's brow furrowed, tension rippling across her otherwise resolute facade. The fragile ground beneath them rocked violently. Silent questions hung between the three, heated and unspoken, like the desert sun burning just beneath the horizon. Rashad tore his gaze away, pacing through the cavernous chamber. The cold marble beneath his silk slippers echoed his restless heartbeats. Each step dredged memories of a past marred by treachery, honor sacrificed for survival, and love extinguished beneath the heavy cloak of duty. "They erased her," he whispered bitterly, "dispatched her to the shadows where no light would find her, buried her in silence." A laugh escaped, dry and cracked, like a desert wind cutting through ancient stones. "And now she returns, a ghost ignited by fury, ready to undo every lie sown into this empire." Layla stepped closer, the scent of rose and cardamom swirling around them, interlacing with the cold musk of history. Her hand found his again, steady and warm, a fragile lifeline amid the tumbling chaos. "The past will not rest until it's faced, Rashad," she said fiercely. "But you are no longer the prisoner of what was. You will claim your own fate." The gleam of raw determination sparkled in his eyes, the Sheikh Billionaire, once shackled by vows not his own, now aflame with the fierce will of a ruler rising to reclaim his crown. Suddenly, the towering doors to the chamber creaked open once more, revealing a new figure cloaked in midnight velvet, embroidered with silver threads that caught the light with a spectral shimmer. The stranger's face lay shadowed beneath a hood, but the presence radiated command and quiet. "Menace, Your Highness." The voice was calm, cutting through the heavy air. "News from the southern borders demands your swift attention. This is no mere family quarrel. It is a war that will consume the very soul of the emirate." Rashad's gaze flashed with steel, every muscle tensed like a coiled spring. "Speak." The envoy produced a scroll sealed with wax, the emblem of a fallen house burned deep into its crimson crest, an omen of ruin. "House Maid rallies in the darkness," the envoy revealed. "Your bride's secret is but the first step in a campaign, destined to drown us in blood and fire." The room fell into a suffocating silence, as heavy and treacherous as the desert's midday blaze. Rashad clenched his fists, the fragile bond of trust between him and Layla, stretching thin as a spider's thread. Then, "There is no time to hesitate." Layla's voice cut through the tension, steady and clear. "Only by exposing every shadow can we hope to survive this coming tempest." A dark smile crept across Rashad's lips, dangerous, electrifying. the smile of a man who would rise from chains and ashes alike. Tomorrow, they expect submission. Instead, I will rise as a storm. He turned to Layla, voice low, charged with a promise forged in fire. Prepare yourself. We carve our path on our terms, no longer puppets in a game crafted by others. Silence swallowed the hall once more, thin, brittle, filled with the sharp scent of impending betrayal. From the shadowed corner, a whisper slipped forth, cold, venomous, and impossible to ignore. The greatest betrayal is no stranger's secret, but the dagger hidden within your own blood. The first light of dawn spilled gently over the endless sands surrounding Zahram Palace, softening the sharp edges of a world long tangled in shadows. Inside the grand hall, once a stage of whispered betrayals and veiled threats, now breathed a fragile calm. Sheikh Rashad al-Khoury stood tall, his silhouette framed by the rising sun's warm embrace. The weight of legacy pressing still, but tempered now by the strength of choice. The night's revelations, the map, the letter, the ghostly locket, had twisted the fate written for him. But standing beside him, Layla's steady hand anchored the storm within. Her eyes, fierce yet tender, held silent promises unspoken in the halls of power, but spoken loud in the language of shared battles. Together, they had unraveled the lies that sought to bind them, exposing enemies hidden behind smiles and shadows. Rashad's voice was low, but unwavering as he turned to face the assembly gathered in the palace's heart, the loyal few who had stood firm against the tides of treachery. The past no longer dictates our destiny, he declared, the steel beneath his words resonating through the vaulted ceilings. Today, we reclaim our empire, not through fear or silence, but through truth, unity, and love. Murmurs of assent rippled through the crowd, their faces illuminated by the golden light and new-found hope. The heavy veil of distrust began to lift. Alliances solidified, not out of necessity, but conviction. The secrets that had threatened to tear Zahram apart were laid bare like the desert at sunrise, harsh, honest, and promising renewal. In a quiet corner, the elderly woman who had unveiled the deepest secret offered Rashad a respectful nod, her eyes glistening with tears, not of sorrow, but relief. The locket, once a symbol of hidden pain, now rested in Rashad's palm, a reminder of the cost of silence and the power of confronting truth. Turning to Layla, Rashad allowed himself the smallest smile, the first in many moons, genuine and soft. "You were more than a guardian of secrets," he said, voice thick with gratitude. "You were the light guiding me through the darkest nights." Layla's eyes shimmered with quiet joy as she stepped closer, the scent of rose and cardamom enveloping them both like a sacred vow. "And you taught me that even in the harshest desert, love can bloom." Their hands found each other easily, fingers entwining with the ease of souls reuniting after a tempest. Around them, the palace seemed to pulse with life, the richness of silk and gold, softened by the warmth of forgiveness and the promise of new beginnings. The Sun climbed higher, casting long, dancing shadows that played upon Persian carpets and marble floors, whispering tales of resilience and hope. Outside, the desert bloomed slowly, a canvas of endless possibility stretching beyond horizons. Rashad stepped forward to the ornate dais where the grand wedding ceremony was to be held. But this day would not be one of resignation. It would be a celebration of choice. His bride, once a cipher shrouded in mystery and danger, was now to be his equal partner, bound not by obligation, but by truth and trust. Her entrance was met with a hush, the crowd captivated by her serene strength. The woman who had once been cloaked in secrets now radiated clear light, her eyes meeting Rashad's with unwavering honesty. In that gaze, the years of doubt and betrayal dissolved, replaced by the steady flame of love, tested, hardened, and true. The ceremony unfolded beneath the cerulean sky, where the Emirates' fate intertwined with their own. Vows exchanged were more than promises. They were declarations of rebirth, resilience, and unity. A whispered pledge to face whatever storms might come, together. As the final words lingered in the warm air, the crowd erupted, not with mere applause, but with heartfelt cheers that resonated through the palace's corridors, reaching even the farthest corners touched by whispered treasons before. In the quiet that followed, Rashad and Layla stood hand in hand beneath the blooming jasmine trellis in the palace gardens. The scent was intoxicating, a testament to life's persistence and beauty, even after the harshest winters. He pulled her gently close, his voice a soft murmur against the hum of dawn. Our empire is no longer shackled by secrets or fear. It lives in us, in our courage, our love, and our fight. She smiled, the kind of smile that promised every new sunrise would be brighter than the last, and together we will build a kingdom where shadows no longer reign. The first birds of morning sang their songs, weaving through the palace stones and over the dunes, a melody of hope and renewal. Sheikh Rashad al-Khoury, a man bound by chains of duty and deceit, now stood free, stronger not in spite of the past, but because he had faced it and emerged triumphant. With Layla by his side, his heart no longer a fortress, but a home. The desert stretched endless beyond the palace walls, vast and eternal. But within Zahram, a new chapter was written, one of love reclaimed, legacies restored, and empires reborn beneath the blazing sun.